Hey, welcome back to the WeMaple Video Show. Today we're here with George Brindle, co-founder, co-creator of Skoki Energy Advisors. George is an engineer on the upstream side, entrepreneur, avid rower, which we'll talk more about, and some other cool interests. Thanks for being here today, George.
Well, Matt, it's great to be here. I really enjoy your show, and it's really an honor to be invited as a guest today to talk about all the great things that are going on in Canada, Alberta, the city, and with all the great entrepreneurs in this city.
Yeah, excellent. Well, a few things to unpack there. I mean, we're on the tail end here of what we could call a deep freeze, cold spell, as we know to experience in Calgary. How's your past couple weeks been?
Past couple of weeks has been a bit frosty, but I'm an outdoor guy. I just love getting outside. It hasn't really restricted us getting out too much. We're still out with the dog, going hiking or walking or whatever we need to do outside. Still get our jobs done, still go visit clients. So it gets cold in Canada, you just get on with your day. That's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, and you're out near Bragg, right, or in Bragg?
I'm out west of Bragg, and out by the trailheads, and that of course is one of the great places to live. We've been out there probably 10 years or so, maybe a bit more, and it's a great place to bring up kids. We've got ample opportunity to mountain bike, fat bike, hike, trail run, cross country ski, whatever suits your fancy. And if you want to fish, the local Elbow River's there, and although the fishing hasn't been great the last couple of years, it still makes for a great day out on the river.
Yeah.
So, well, there's, like you said, there's so much to unpack today. So where do you think we should start today, Matt?
Yeah. Well, we were talking a little bit about cycling and kind of, you said you've got a road bike. So do you go on, like on 22X? Are you on the main highway or just on the off-roads? Or you ever bike into the city from Bragg?
I have not biked into the city too many times from Bragg. We have some neighbors that bike in quite often in summer when it's nice. But for me, the road biking is out on the weekends and ride whatever paved back road that's around. It's beautiful country, so there's endless places to ride to, and that whole journey down to Longview is, for those that haven't cycled it, is always it's really worth the cycle. It's the vistas that you experience while riding are just fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, being able to get out in nature and kind of clear your mind when you've got these different stakeholders and different clients and different vested interests, and then your family. And so what's that sort of connection been for you to, be it rowing or be it out in a walk in nature that, supports you being a better entrepreneur when you've got that connection to go out and clear your mind?
Well, I think it's very tempting, and I think there are periods where it's always necessary to be busy and be action oriented and get stuff done. But the complexities of the situation, and particularly the kind of work we do, they do require soak time, and that soak time for me is best done out in nature, whether it's sitting by the river or going canoeing or going sailing or going for a road bike or whatever it takes to get some clear space without my phone ringing, without traffic around, without things that I really need to worry about in the moment. And so I can let it soak, I can solve the problems, and then come back with at least some things to do or some things to try to resolve whatever issue is upon us. It's a good place to get some soak time.
Mm. Yeah, I like that analogy. One of the first conversations we had, you mentioned, working with some of the top drawer kind of advisors, or your group of consultants that you choose to work with, or you bring in on different projects. This top shelf or top drawer kind of analogy of very specific, hyper focused experts in these particular areas. Another kind of analogy is there's a hole in a ship, and they get the guy to come in and fix the hole, and he's takes the nail and the hammer and hammers it in, fixes the hole, takes 2 minutes and says, that'll be $10,000. And the captain of the ship says, well, it took you like 5 seconds. And he's like, well, yeah, but I knew the exact kind of hammer and nail and where to hammer it and solved your problem exactly the way it needed to be solved. And so, with those kinds of analogies packed in, what's your approach with Skoki and, hiring the right people and knowing how to take a look at specific kinds of problems?
Well, that's where the benefit and voice of experience comes in. That's what we sell is advisory in the engineering space. And we sell specifically expertise. So going back to your how to patch that hole analogy, knowing where to do that comes from understanding the situation, understanding which approach is probably suitable, and of course to get the experiences you have to know what the outcome is from trying other things, and that is the life experience you get as an engineer or any other profession. As you go through, you pick up experiences and they somehow wonderfully embed themselves in your mind, and they're there to access when you need them, right? And sometimes they're very deep, which is why the soak time helps, right? Hopefully you don't need the soak time while you're trying to pitch some answer to a hole in a ship hull somewhere. That seems like it has a little more of a time limit on it on that particular analogy, but the experience is the knowing which one to apply, right? So that's what we sell as a business. So we sell engineering expertise, and we sell it in a market that's not the usual engineering market. We sell this expertise across a range of customers, and these customers can be doing all sorts of things. They could be a major oil and gas producer. I don't know if you noticed today, but I got the I Love Canadian Energy sweatshirt on, thanks to the guys at Canada Action, favorite group. And so they're a major part of our business is serving those customers. They're contemplating some big business direction. They want to explore building something that they've never built before, or taking on a market in an unusual manner. Or if they have a stranded natural gas asset and they're trying to get creative to get it to market. So we often work on a lot of those front-end things, front-end studies that help a company pick a direction. So that's a major piece of our business, and that's with existing national, multinational, sometimes even local producers that are trying to figure out what to do with the situation. So that's a piece of our customer base that relies on our expertise. Yes, others can figure it out, but it's always useful to have a group that has experienced many, many things across many corners of the industry, using many kinds of technology. And that's where we have this pool of consultants that we draw upon, that we bring in through our company and collaborate with them for the benefit of our clients. So that's one of our major things we do. The next thing we do is we deal with the smaller startup companies. So the smaller startup companies would be somebody has an idea, and they've taken this idea, they've experimented with it in the lab, they're partway through the technology readiness level scale, and they're trying to commercialize it. Or they think they'd like to contemplate commercializing it, and they're trying to build some larger units or a pilot plant or something like that.
And there's a rating scale, is that right? Is it out of 9, the technology readiness? There is sort of a uniform rating?
It's a uniform way of rating where people are in the technology development cycle.
0 to 9?
It's 1 to 9. 1 is really the foundations of the idea, and 1 is fully commercial, and it's easily demonstrated to be commercial because there's many of them operating today. And it's a fairly standardized process. So we tend to work with those guys that are in that middle zone. They've made progress to a certain point, and now they're going, I think I want to get to the field and build something, either as a demonstration or a pilot plant, or simply to understand the scaling effect of the technology. So it comes out of the lab where there's safety processes, and now it has to go into the public realm. The public realm has humans. They might be your kid, somebody's brother, somebody's sister, and they have to operate this, and they have to operate it safely, and they have to operate it without hurting the environment, and obey all the regulations, get all the permits. And the inventors don't come from this world in general terms. They come from a world where they invent stuff. They're academics, they're scientists, they're super creative people. They're very exciting to work with, but their space is not putting it into the field. And so we work with them, and we create all the paperwork steps with them, with other suppliers, to turn their invention into something that's regulatory compliant. It's safe, it doesn't pollute, it's easy to operate, and most fundamentally, it demonstrates the technology at a level where then they can take the next steps to a commercial facility. So we work with that as a group. And then there's all the derivatives of this commercializing technology that we also sort of bring into the fold. So I have an investor. He says, these really inventive guys, they've come to me, and I think I want to put some money in. Can you take a look at it and tell me where I'm at? Are they really as far through it as they say they are? Do they say they're at a technology readiness level 5 and they're actually 3? Because I want to understand that if I want to put money in. How far away from commerciality are we? What is the return on my investment potentially going to be from a schedule or a money perspective? What do we still have to figure out? So for certain investors, we look at their potential investments for them technically or techno-economically, and we help them understand really a little bit more about their investment, particularly from risks, costs, and schedule. So we do that assessment. Sometimes we do the same thing for a financier or a financial institution. So they've been through the angel investor step. So that's the step where the guy comes to me and says, "Hey, what do you think?" And they're trying to do even one more step. And the commercial lender says, "Does this business plan really hold water? Is the capital forecasts, are they right? Do you think they're right? Do they hold together? Do the operating costs hold together? What do you think it's actually going to take to permit this thing? What about the other stakeholders? Have we engaged all the other stakeholders? Have we forecast the right maintenance in the business plan?" So we'll work with the commercial lenders and try to understand all of the financial dimensions of lending money to a project. And then there's probably another version of the same kind of analysis that says, "Hey, I've got a major," let's just, for the purposes of discussion, call them a oil producer, and they say, "Hey, this technology inventor has come to me. They're well backed. They seem thoughtful. We want to deploy it on our site, but we don't necessarily understand all the dimensions of deploying it on our site and how it might integrate with our operation and what the labor intensity is for our operating people. Can you help us sort our way through that?" And so we do that as well. And so there's this thread of, you really need to have the voice of experience looking at stuff and vetting it and giving it some critical eye, not to dissuade them so much from putting money into things that they shouldn't. It's to help them understand the situation better, to protect them so that they work better with the people they're investing with, or that they're loaning money to, or they're buying an invention from. So we just try to flesh out that understanding. Sometimes we go all the way through of being the actual engineer on the project. Sometimes we provide project management oversight and scheduling services. We provide an array of things, but there's this thread of invention that goes through it. Everything from we're trying to put a new technology in the field, or we have an asset in the field like an oil and gas reservoir or a geothermal reservoir, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it, right? But it's not that inexperienced people can't figure this out, but we try to compress the answer to get them an answer relatively quickly.
And so, say on one end of the spectrum, you've got these large multinationals, and then say on the other end of the spectrum, you've got inventors, as you describe them, who want to turn what they've invented into something scalable or deploy it. And then everything in between, as you've sort of described. Where's that? So going back to, say, the inventor who's created something and then wants to bring it out to market, do you find that, and this could be even sort of related to your own career, because you went through the traditional education to become an engineer and then had a fantastic career in that space, and then went on to then be an entrepreneur, essentially. Do you think that for you or for these inventors, do you start out with sort of a discipline or something you're interested in and then become an entrepreneur? Or do you think inherently entrepreneurship is something that's just in the DNA first, and then you find a way to deploy the entrepreneurship? Or what's your kind of way of thinking about that?
Well, I don't know about everybody else's perspective. So when we started this business, it's not a typical engineering business, but it is typical for this subset of the engineering or consultancy business. It's quite typical. So as I went through my engineering career, I had always around me various groups of very senior people, and they traveled sometimes alone between clients, but usually as a small group. And when I left working for all the major engineering houses that I'd worked for, I'm out on my own, and I quite quickly aligned with one of these groups. And we worked under that group. So in this case, one of our group, and he's long passed on now, that's so unfortunate. And he provided this umbrella company, which is the function that we have now. And so all of us consultants, those of us that were consultants, we would work through his firm, and he would essentially aggregate us as an expertise offering. Well, he passed on, and the next one we belonged to unfortunately went bankrupt due to nothing to do with the actual business, more to do with commercial real estate gone bad. And there was an opportunity. We didn't find what we wanted to do on the market with any other firm, and we said to ourselves, I guess it's our turn to own the umbrella. And so that's what this firm is. We have a group of consultants that work with us. We aggregate them under the umbrella. We provide the business infrastructure for them. They sometimes bring clients to us. Sometimes we have clients from our own efforts that require people deployed to solve any particular problem. And so that's the space we work in. We're this expertise aggregator in terms of trying to describe what the business is, that brings this expertise together selectively, carefully, from a group of people that we know broadly trust, great levels of trust amongst all of us. And we put ourselves and each other to work solving these problems that are required for the entrepreneurs, the tech developers, the users, the potential users, the bankers, investors, lenders. It's a neat space to be. We love it.
So for our viewers out there, can you give the basic distinction that people can understand the difference between upstream and downstream and what that means in the energy business?
Sure. Let me pick the most basic definition. So and we'll pick it in the context of oil and gas production. So in oil and gas production, nearly all of the production gets to market starting at the reservoir. So the gas comes out of the rock, or the oil comes out of the rock or out of the formation, rises through a well, is excavated up in the oil sands, and it gets processed. And it gets processed into a clean product that can be shipped through a shipping pipeline, and it goes into a processing facility. Well, the major gas plants process it and strip it essentially down to methane, and that's where it turns into the downstream distribution. So in the gas plant, from downstream of that processing plant, essentially to the furnace in your house, that's downstream, and that includes everything from distribution to marketing, etc. Upstream is that well all the way into the plant. And then the plant itself there's different views as to where that sits. There is a component that we call midstream. And midstream is often that processing itself. And you'll see that there are corporations that engage simply in the processing. They don't want to own upstream all the way to the sand face, and they don't really want to own the marketing and distribution. They just want to focus on processing, and those are midstreamers. Sometimes the upstream operator owns the plant, and the plant gets lumped into upstream, and sometimes the downstream distributor owns the plant, and it gets lumped into downstream. So there's some points of indistinction, and the oil plants work the same way. So if I produce oil, one of the major outcomes from barrel of oil is gasoline. There's others, things like diesel and jet and bunker oil for ships, propane, petrochemicals. It all heads off. So up to that refinery, it's most clearly upstream. The refinery itself it's kind of known as refining, and then downstream is really the refinery going to get to market, and that can be anything up to the petrochemical plant inlet, the gas pump on your local gas station, etc. That's quite clearly downstream.
Do you think that Canadian citizens have a connection to, when they flick their light switch on or plug in their iPhone to charge, or when they're standing at the gas tank? Do you think that most people think about their energy, where it came from or how it was made?
I suspect not. That if I had to say what the average answer is for the average Canadian, it's a bit like speculation, but I would say that we quite poorly connect to energy in the same way that we probably quite poorly connect to food supply or many other things for that matter.
Yeah, raw materials in your iPad could be another example. You're not necessarily thinking about how they got those materials, where they're sourced, what's in lithium.
Well, that's right. I look at this little plastic cord that connects to my mic. Well, that's here because of the oil and gas industry. And there's a piece of copper inside it that's there because we mine metals. It's wonderful, but I don't think the typical Canadian thinks of this as the product of successful mining and the product of successful oil and gas industry. It's is a thing, right? The plastic meat tray. Does meat still come in plastic trays? I think it does.
Meat's going to be grown in a lab soon, is what I read.
Well, I hope not. I kind of like the ranching operations.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of mic cables, though, too, you've got a connection to audio. You mentioned your wife is into audio recording of some sort.
My wife is an audio book producer, editor, narrator, production expert, and she works with a lot of Canadian authors, getting a lot of Canadian books into the audio space. So we have a studio in the house, and it works great. It's a really fun business to connect with Canadians coast to coast.
Yeah. Yeah, what a diverse sort of experience you're having here in Alberta. You're also an avid rower, a member, and did you say you're on the board of directors with the Calgary Rowing Club? Or
that I am. It's one of the many connections I have to water. I very much enjoy the rowing experience. We have a great club. It's a wonderful community, but it's not the only thing I do, because I sail and I canoe and I fish, I kayak, and I do many things on the water. As long as the water is liquid, I'm usually found somewhere around it. And with so many skiers in the family, I guess even when the water isn't liquid, we're out on the water, but it's the snowy water.
What about ice fishing?
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that experience?
It's an interesting experience. I don't enjoy it as much as the summer experience, but
yeah. Did you catch anything?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Upper Kananaskis Lake is good for fish. So.
And the on the water experience, you were showing me some photos on your Instagram, which we'll link people to if they want to follow you. Was it? You were building a paddleboard or building a?
Well, I build all sorts of things. You know, there's anything from vintage bikes to paddleboards to rowing boats to motor boats to all sorts. I feel like I was put on this world to build stuff, and so I build stuff. I have a shop and I build stuff. It's when I'm not figuring problems out, I'm figuring problems out.
So the engineer likes to engineer.
The engineer likes to engineer. It's funny how that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's guilty as charged.
Yeah. So here we are, 2025. You know, there's political changes, both back here in Canada, across the border, and you know we have abundant of natural resources as a country that certain groups that really like to see them get to market, and it seems as though some interests that seem to be challenging to get those resources to market, let's say. So, you know, what's your outlook for 2025 in Canada's energy sector?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't think it's a problem that's isolated to the energy sector, because we are failing to thrive on a GDP per capita basis. It would be hard to say I was satisfied with where I'm seeing Canada in the world. I think we should be doing much better getting our abundance of natural resources, which we are so good at producing cleanly, whether it's in the mining space, metallurgical coal, oil and gas, crops. We get them to market, and we're very good at it, and we're very clean at it. I would compare anything we produce in this country on is it ethically produced? Is it environmentally friendly? Are we doing better than our peer group around the world? I say wholeheartedly yes. And the world needs more of Canada. The world needs more Canadian energy, more Canadian food, more Canadian forestry. And we have a opportunity that we've always had, that we've been thankfully reminded of as of recent political events, that we've been reminded very starkly, and we need to pay attention and get Canadians to work being a supplier to the rest of the world. That's my view.
Yeah.
We have choices. We have choices, Matt, on what we do at the next federal election. And I live in fear for my kids that we do not change direction politically. I feel that change is so necessary in order to bring Canada to market, the global market. We can't do more of the same. We just can't do more of the same. It doesn't matter who's leading the federal party. We can't do more of the same. We have to approve projects, recognize we're good at what we're doing, that we're clean producers of just about everything. Be proud of it. Put Canadians to work.
Yeah, that last bit around being proud of it, and as you alluded to the Canada Action Group and the sweater you're wearing, I love Canadian Energy. That sense of kind of pride and gratitude, and to be grateful of these abundant resources. How does that connect, do you think, to the decision making that would need to happen at a provincial or federal level to help move that needle forward?
Well, I think we need to reflect on all the great things that have happened in Canada because we were bold enough to say yes. We have I feel an unfortunate political state that's made it very easy to say no. It's not a gutsy choice to say no. We say no to so many things, so many great opportunities. It's hard to say yes. It takes guts to say yes to projects. But every time we've said yes, and it doesn't matter if it's James Bay Power or Trans Mountain Pipeline or any number of projects in this country, CN Tower, we've done some very neat things because we had the guts to say yes. And I don't think there's a Canadian that, if you show them that list of the great Canadian projects, as I call them, will have any regrets and probably nothing other than pride. And we need more of that. We haven't built great projects for a while, I feel. I hope somebody proves me wrong, but I feel like we haven't built great Canadian projects for a while. And we need to do more of that.
100%. It wasn't even that long ago that we built our railroad in comparison to the rest of the world, and there's this DNA inherently kind of in our culture where it's like we're Canadian, but really within a certainly at least a couple of generations, the Canadianness in us, we're not in Indigenous Canadian, not in the Indigenous, what that word kind of means now, but I mean from here. Our great-grandparents or grandparents came from another part of the world and helped build Canada, and those that sort of go get it done, let's create this country, let's build this railroad, let's agriculture, the explosion in agriculture, the early days, if we look at Leduc and sort of the early days of Alberta's energy story, that has sort of gone away, that thing.
It is, and I can't put my finger on why it's gone away, but by gosh, we got to bring it back. I love the railway example. There's not a Canadian alive that regrets the railway, that regrets James Bay Power, that regrets any of these things. Railway is awesome. St. Lawrence Seaway. Does anybody on the Great Lakes regret having a seaway? We need to do more of this.
Could it be that we're seeing this change, taking to the tech sector, for example, and everything that's gone on in this province with money that's been raised with AI? Could it be that we're seeing a transition from projects being kind of physically built to there being other solutions that are having a massive impact?
Well, it could be. The thing that I believe has to happen from any project is not just the spending to build it. We get a little hung up on construction jobs, but what I think we need to pay attention to are those jobs which become evergreen as a result of having the infrastructure. We have a railway. So many people have a livelihood in this country because we have a railway. And the farmers can get their stuff to market because we have a railway. We can get stuff to market because we have a seaway. So it's not just the building of it, it's the what it provides around it. And particularly in the local space, I call local Canada, right? I do struggle a little bit more in the digital space because the digital space can put people to work that aren't Canadian in the digital space, except when you're actually building it. And so I like the digital space. I'm thrilled that we're talking about data centers in this province. I want to see them built. We're going to provide power to them. To provide power to them, we're going to have to provide energy jobs. That's great. I hope also that derivative business that depend on the data center gets built in Canada to hire Canadians, kids, so they have solid employment, so they can buy houses without working 3 jobs. That's so important.
With the 100%, with the engineering expertise that Skoki does, if one of the big 7, or even call it what maybe eventually will become the big 3, there's only so much of this, say, technology global pie, call it 7, was to come in and say, hey, want to build a data center and we need power, we need it now, we need it to be close, and we need it to be able to be built quickly. What are your thoughts on, data center getting built, connecting to a natural gas plant, so it's autonomous, it's off-grid, independent, baseload? Is that something that that with the portfolio of expertise that you do within Skoki, that you'd be able to support one of these tech companies in getting set up?
Well, we often provide that owner's engineer space. So we help with the interface. We're obviously too small a firm to provide everything that's needed. The building the gas plant is easy enough. And there's super well qualified established firms to do that. And the data center people know what they're doing. So there's firms to do that. But the interface is sometimes where they need the extra management. And we do fit in that role because the gas plant people know their space and the data center people know their space, and it's that interface. You find sometimes multiple industries use the same terms and they mean completely different things with the use of the same term. And so we help decipher and translate that space sometimes.
Yeah, when we first sat down, you used the word advertising, and that's another one of these types of words, or marketing is another good one in the space we're in, that just the word, oh, you work in advertising, or oh, you work in marketing, is your kind of context or your container for what we think as human beings what that means. We associate with what that means, the same way of saying the data center, build a data center. The context of those words changes so much depending on the context in which the way in which that person is viewing the world or what they do in their role.
Oh yeah, well, that's the advertising space is not something that I have much expertise on, but it's a bit ubiquitous, right? Even for a high school boy that's going out to find a job, he does marketing. Of course he does. He has a resume, and the resume is his marketing, right? So we're exposed to the various facets of marketing, just as part of selling ourselves as a human. And then of course, as you become a business or you become a group of people, it grows and grows, and the definition broadens and includes more things. And it's not a space I understand super well. That's why I keep some people on the side that can steer me right for that.
Yeah, right on. Well, are there any current projects that you can talk about in a general sense, or anything that you're working on within your portfolio that's exciting, or that you want to share?
Well, we and our clients tend to operate a little under the radar when we're dealing with investors and banks and the law firms and people that are contemplating high-level business strategy. It tends to be kept quite quiet. One of the things that we're more public about in our advocacy for is some geothermal energy projects. We've worked on quite a few of those at their onset. There have not been very many completed and producing power in this country. There's the only one I'm aware of is up in Hinton currently. So that's great that they're making a go of it. But we're always excited to be in that space, and we've been in that space for probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years. The company's only 3 years old, but we ourselves have been more involved in that in various projects that have been screened in this country and in other countries around the world. So we do love that space, and we're currently supplying some expertise on a number of those projects globally.
Yeah, there's another one to this example of a word that could mean so many different things, because within geothermal you've got, of course, what maybe people would think of, a heat pump, to heat my residential home, and then you've got,
they're not wrong,
AGS, EGS, all these different types of geothermal. Is there anything that you've seen, anything else that you've seen in that space that stood out to you as interesting?
Well, there's all sorts of very interesting technology being developed in the geothermal space. Lots of the downhole reservoir tools are all built from the oil and gas space. They're very good at finding oil, gas, water. They're really not so great at imaging other things. We're talking about things that we're trying to understand miles beneath our feet. Literally miles beneath our feet, through a little hole that we've drilled. It's maybe not this big, it's maybe this big, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out what's down there. And of course, we can't just go down there and excavate to see what's down there. This is logistically challenging, right? So we're trying to see what's down there with imaging tools that try and tell us what's going on. So there's some fantastic stuff being developed for that. There's some local Canadian firms trying to figure out how to put technology into old depleted oil and gas wells to generate geothermal energy. There's Canadian firms exploring doing geothermal in other parts of the world. Turkey, for example, Caribbean, for the example. There's Canadian firms doing that. And of course, there's Canadian expertise that are doing geothermal work in the southern continent, in Australia, taking a look at various interesting things, means to exploit geothermal from their reservoirs. So there's a lot of inventive space in geothermal, and there's a bit of an A to Z, everything from how do I see where the heat is, and if I can see it, how much is there? How do I get it to surface? How do I turn it into something that is transmittable, which is usually in the form of power? What do I do with it, right? How much does it cost? Is there a way to increase efficiencies in the cycle?
Where are you seeing Alberta's leadership as well? Oil and gas, natural gas, geothermal, all these require drilling expertise, not just the human capital to that expertise from an engineering and geosciences, but also the equipment, the rigs that are used. How are you seeing, in a more broad sense, Alberta's expertise transitioning to other clean forms of energy?
Well, gosh, we're good at poking holes in the ground. That's we think about the efficiency that is in the oil and gas industry. It's really interesting. I can get a liter of gas at a wholesale price to the pump. I'm not talking about all the taxes that you and I have to pay to buy that liter of gas, but I'm getting that liter of gas to the pump for prices that are in the tens of cents, certainly less than $1. And I go into my grocery store and I can't buy anything for a liter in a liter size for less than $1. I think, wow, that cycle efficiency is just incredible. It's mind blowing to look at how efficient we are. And it all starts at the drill bit. We are really good at poking holes in the ground, in the right place, right size, completing the wells so that they produce. If that doesn't translate to geothermal, I don't know what does.
What is stacking another idea on that? Where does supply chain come in? So, for example, some may speculate, or there might be a degree of certainty here, that Alberta is one of the cheapest places in the world to drill, or take Texas as another example, because the whole supply chain and expertise and availability and equipment and everything's sort of there, and data too of what's going on subsurface. Where do you think that added benefit that Alberta has on top of the drilling expertise, but having supply chain, how else do you think that stacks to make Alberta and Canada a really attractive place for some of these things?
Well, I'd like to believe we're competitive. I don't know if I have enough evidence myself to really comment in detail on supply chain. But when it comes to bringing things to market, we must have it. We must have our stuff in good hand, really. For us to deliver energy to the market like we do, we pretty much have it figured out. And that that's a supply chain that has everything in it. We talked a bit about the downstream and marketing and pipelines and the railways. All of that is part of the supply chain. And again, maybe your comment about is do Canadians connect to energy, or connect to anything else in food supply or anything? Do they connect as well as they should? Well, probably not, right? That understanding that all of these things that we need to approve are big elements in the supply chain, so fundamental to Canadian success, particularly in these politically troubled times.
Yeah, food's an interesting one too. I think in one of our other chats leading up to today's recording, I like to be able to go in the grocery store and there's red strawberries year round. I could buy a watermelon any time of year. I could find any kind of fruit or vegetable, generally speaking, that's somewhat close to ripe. Avocados, and here we are in the dead of winter, so those things are that's fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's incredible that we have the supply chain that well figured out. The fresh flowers come up for Valentine's Day just passed, right?
Yeah.
We all pay attention to that.
I do have an issue though with the avocado thing. They're green and you can't even cut into it, and then just suddenly all 8 of them are ripe. And it's I don't want to just eat a bowl of guacamole. I'd like to put an avocado on an English muffin and then it's just suddenly they're all ripe. But how do you?
I don't know how that works. Right? They go from inedible to overripe in, it seems like, about 7 minutes. I'm sure it's not 7 minutes, but it does seem like this.
Is everyone eating guacamole? Because it's just you can't get a lot of use case out of a bag of 8 avocados.
It does make your kid's bag of chips last a little longer if you put the guacamole out.
Well, true. I just learned a trick which seems so obscure, but to brown sugar, you just, if it gets, it's, how did I not know this sooner? You just put a piece of bread in the bag of brown sugar and it restores itself to being moist.
So true. That's my wife's trick.
Okay. Is she big on baking or?
Big on brown sugar for sure.
Okay. How do you take your coffee, by the way?
I take it black, usually with some of Alberta's dairy products in it.
Oh, nice. So with milk or cream then, so
Yeah.
that's just not really taking it black then.
Well, it's not black. It's just, but not with sugar.
We'll get into the mechanics here. I don't have to get into the mechanics on how you take your coffee. What else is exciting for you this quarter? You're rowing. You've got your son who's biathlon training. Did you say he's just over in Italy?
He's just over in Italy. He's flying back. He's flying back this afternoon, so I get to go from here couple stops, and then off to the airport to pick him up. He's just been competing in Italy internationally for the first time for the last 2 weeks. He's having a super good time.
What's that's fascinating, fascinating sport, because you get your body into this intense state of adrenaline and your heart is racing, and then you need to control the physiology of your body quite quickly to be able to get your shot off. How, like, is it?
It's amazing.
Is that was through his youth? Did you have him come up in training, at a young age, and hunting and training, or how did it suddenly I want to do biathlon?
Well, the Foothills Nordic Ski Club is one of the big clubs in Calgary, and they have a ski at school program. And one day they showed up at my older boy's school, and he comes home with a brochure. Has this, I think I want to do this, he says. Okay, we said. So, and that was, gosh, I don't know how many years ago that was. I think that's 13, 14 years ago now that he was doing that.
Good marketing.
Yeah.
On behalf of the flyer, sign me up.
Well, it's been great, and then when the younger boy got old enough, he said, "Yeah, I want to do this too." So the little brothers kind of want to be like the big brothers at a certain point in their lives, I think.
100%.
And he's still with it. The older boy is training to be a geologist, so he's having a great time looking at rocks and thinking about being Canadian in the world of mining or oil and gas or wherever it takes him.
Nice. Someone used an analogy the other day that I heard. The engineers and geoscientists, they're called the eggs. Have you ever heard this? The eggs?
I don't know if I've heard that term, but eggheads is sometimes appropriately applied to the engineers.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
Thanks for coming by today. Anything else? I know we also were chatting about wanting to create this kind of laid back kind of vibe of the conversation not being too formal. Do you feel as though that was generated for you today?
I feel like it worked pretty well, Matt. I'm looking forward to seeing the edited clip, and it's been fun. It's been fun, and I think it was this shirt, thanks to Cody, that put me in the right frame of mind today.
Oh, that's excellent. Anything else you want to say about Canada's energy sector or your career with Skoki Energy Advisors?
Well, gosh, I love the space. I really do love the space. I love the oil and gas space. I love the power space. I love Canadian mining projects. I've had my friends in metallurgical coal. There's not much to love other than that kind of thing. Like, really, I love being a Canadian that works in commodity space and trying to be a nationalist.
Excellent. Well, where can people find you if they want to learn more about Skoki or follow your adventures on Instagram?
Well, they can find me under my name on Instagram, but hopefully they'll have looked us up at Skoki Energy Advisors on the internet. They can search for that, and they'll come to our website and they can send us an email, and we're always happy to meet and talk about what's going on. We certainly want to be part of the next set of great Canadian projects that comes to market, and we hope people will call us.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming by today.
Thanks, Matt. Love to be here.
Right on.